Nation, we are days removed from the 2024 NFL Draft. Everyone is still feeling the vibes, the good feelings from what we think is a very good NFL Draft from our Pittsburgh Steelers, man. They addressed a lot of needs, a lot of emphasis on the offensive line, and they did draft a wide receiver. However, they only drafted one wide receiver. The belief was they would double dip, and they did not. They selected Roman Wilson with the 84th pick, and he is going to be a very reliable receiver for the Steelers in the future. Will he be the number 2? That is to be determined. It's very possible that they view him as that for now, but the Steelers are still in need for wide receivers, man. They're still in need for extra bodies, and honestly, man, a true number 2 as of now on the roster.
Just somebody with extra experience, somebody with true leadership at the wide receiver position, just more reliability, because outside of George Pickens and Roman Wilson, it's nothing but depth guys. It's just people that just haven't really done anything in recent memory.
No, we got Calvin Austin III as the punt returner, most importantly. He didn't really show much on the offensive side. Granted, the scheme was terrible, but we'll see if that changes. We got Quez Watkins, Van Jefferson. Not much there. Not a lot of dependability. There is some veteranship, just not a lot of production and the guys that are in that room. So we are going to need extra bodies. We're going to need more so an actual wide receiver too, an outside receiver opposite George Pickens, because for now, Wilson is a slot receiver. He could transition to the outside opposite Pickens, but we still need that extra guy opposite Pickens, man. And there are a few options still after the NFL Draft. Business is not over. They're going to be looking at any and all options to see who else they can add in multiple rooms amongst the roster, but especially wide receiver. They did restructure Alex Highsmith's contract during draft week, clearing up over $7 million in cap space. So that gives them some room to potentially bring in a guy for that said cap space. And that could be via free agency. That could be via trade. That is to be determined. But today we're going to go over some of the more realistic and one of the more favorable names in regards to the Steelers adding another wide receiver to that wide receiver room.
Of course.
So, obviously, man, we're going to look at free agency first. As you see here is the list. Not a very rich wide receiver room in free agency. Not stacked at all. I mean, these are pretty much, and I say this respectfully, these are pretty much like the scraps that are left over after all of the free agency periods have washed away. They are still some potential targets for the Steelers and would be some reliability. There would be some decent options for the Steelers if they want to look for more wide receivers. At the top list is Hunter Renfrow. His downfall is more so because of a scheme aspect. We all know how reliable he can be, but he's not an outside receiver, and we already have enough slot weapons, so would they add him? Probably not. Allen Robinson is a guy that we could absolutely see coming back to the Steelers, only because, they cut him for cap reasons. They saved, 10-something million in cap space while cutting him. They could always still bring him back. There are rumors, there is talk that they could bring back Patrick Peterson and or Cameron Sutton. So if they're going to bring back those guys, then I would imagine maybe a guy like Allen Robinson could come back. Someone that is a leader, a lot of experience, and fits Arthur Smith's system because he has that in and out versatility.
He does.
And last year, he didn't see a lot of production. He didn't see a lot of targets, but
he was not a major factor in the passing game, but that may have been a factor because of Matt Canada's passing game in his system.
Yeah, but
maybe with Arthur Smith, maybe that's different.
But as of now, man, he would be a phenomenal blocker in our system, which he was last year. That was his biggest asset, was him and the usage of being a run blocker. And he would be used the same way. Maybe he could be used in a way of more targets, but I would see him more as a run blocker. He's established there. He's familiar with some of the faces in the locker room. So that would make some sense there. I'm not even going to talk about Odell. None of us are interested in Odell coming back. That is an absolute hard pass. No, thank you. The Ravens don't even want him back. No, thank you. Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup is probably at the top of the list in terms of guys that are the best options in free agency because he does have that wide receiver 2 experience. He was decent in Dallas for Dak Prescott. He played all 17 games last year. He didn't even amaze 500 yards, but he does have that experience. He's a nasty blocker as well. So if they are looking at some of the better options, Michael Gallup's probably at the top of the list.
Yeah, he's somebody that's the prototypical wide receiver 2. He had very good chemistry opposite side of CeeDee Lamb, good chemistry with Dak Prescott, and still, in my opinion, quite an underrated hand at the wide receiver position.
I agree. He's only 28 years old. He just turned 28, so he could still be a viable asset for at least a year. So if they want to look at a guy like him, they very well could do that. Tyler Boyd is a name that's been circulating all around the free agency period because there has been an offer for him from the Steelers for weeks now, and Tyler Boyd has not accepted it.
Now, with the restructure of Alex Highsmith, maybe the Steelers add more upon to their offer. I don't know. The Steelers don't really seem to be that type of team that are desperate to acquire a free agent. Once they have an offer for you, that's it. If you don't take it, then no more contract talks. Simple as that. But when it comes to Tyler Boyd, maybe the interest strikes again. Maybe it sparks up a little bit, and maybe they try to acquire Tyler Boyd. But when it comes to Tyler Boyd and his play, he's more so a slot wide receiver.
Right.
That's usually his style, but he is one of the more reliable wide receivers left in free agency.
He is, man. He showed that with Cincinnati his entire NFL career. So reliable, great hands catcher. He is a leader in the locker room. I think we could definitely use that. He obviously came from Pitt, so he played at Heinz Field before coming into the NFL. So he understands what it means to play in Pittsburgh, what it means to play in that stadium. So I would welcome Tyler Boyd still. Whether he would take a lesser deal or the Steelers do increase their offer for a guy like him, there is interest there. So that's a very realistic option, is Tyler Boyd. And he could play the receiver two abilities, or maybe they put Roman Wilson outside. Maybe they have Roman Wilson as the receiver two and put Boyd in the slot. It's a very possible scenario they could go.
Hey, you never know.
Anything, they could go anywhere, man. But we still favor Tyler Boyd a lot. Michael Thomas. The downfall of Michael Thomas needs to be studied.
Yeah, after 2019, the guy just been plagued with injuries. He missed all of 2021. Cannot stay healthy whatsoever. I'm not even looking his direction. It's a big, big red flag.
No, and he's 31, so he's on the older side. He would be here only a year, but even still, Michael Thomas, he just seems like one of those it's unreliable because of his health, because of his injuries, and frankly, he's just not the same player.
No, the Saints gave him chance after chance to come back, get healthy, and just see if they could still have a guy like Michael Thomas, and maybe Michael Thomas could get back to Providence, and it just has not happened for 3-4 years that he has been with the Saints.
Right. Next on the list is Marquez Valdez-Scantling of the Chiefs for the past 2 years. He has had some issues with drops, especially in the deep ball. I don't think the Steelers are going to look his direction. He is a veteran. He's been around the league. He's played with some of the best quarterbacks in the league, so they will value that. But his production and his play on the field in terms of just production or his inconsistency with catching the ball or drops, I think that's still one of those things that is going to turn fans away, us included.
Yeah, big time.
And I will put last on the list here is DJ Chark because he's experienced. The Steelers showed interest in him coming into the draft process. He's another guy that's been around the league for the Jags, for the Lions, for the Panthers.
Yeah.
So maybe they look at him in his way. He absolutely has the stature for a wide receiver too.
Yeah, prototypical outside wide receiver.
He has great speed. He has a big playability to him as well, and he is young enough to still fit into this wide receiver core. He does have drop issues as well, so that is a concern. But I think they're going to value his experience, his youth, and their history in evaluating him during the draft. So those are some of the biggest options when it comes to the Steelers in the wide receiver free agency market after the draft, which is most importantly Allen Robinson, Michael Gallup, Tyler Boyd, and probably DJ Chark. Maybe Michael Thomas. It's not very rich as expected. It's not full. Most of the options here are just they're meh. They're mid options. Most of these guys would just be here 1 year. They're 1 year rentals.
Yeah, they would just be fill-ins.
So that begs the question, man, do the Steelers actually make a trade for a wide receiver still? There are rumors of that still happening. There's a possibility that could still happen. I know Brandon Ayuk is still the fan favorite, the heavy favorite, especially after the 49ers drafted Ricky Pearsall at 31 in the first round. So anything's possible, man. And there was news that the Steelers were in talks with the 49ers for Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
They did not come to an agreement on a trade because the Steelers did not meet the 49ers asking price, which shows you Omar Khan will not crack for any GM. And he leads the negotiation process.
Yeah.
He will not increase, he will not improve his offer for a certain guy, man. He only makes a move when it makes sense. So the fact that he and the Niners couldn't come to an agreement on Deebo, I mean, Brandon Ayuk's going to cost more for capital, for cap space, so you're getting a better player and you're getting someone that's going to be here for the long haul. So
of course.
Maybe that's still a possibility. Or maybe because of the trade talks that Niners were having for both of them, maybe the value drops for either guy.
If the 49ers are willing to accept less, but losing 2 dynamic targets.
Or at least one of them.
Despite drafting Ricky Pearsall in the first round, losing 2 dynamic targets, they're going to want major capital.
Absolutely.
And Omar Khan's the type of guy that's not going to budge. He didn't budge for Jalen Johnson in trade talks with the Bears in the middle of last season. I don't think he's going to budge for the 49ers.
Right. So Brandon Ayuk is still a possibility. Debo's still a possibility.
I mean, hey, you never know. You never know, right?
Yeah, anything can happen at any time. But the one guy that we've been still hell-bent on, and the one guy that is probably the most favorable, probably a little more realistic, is, of course, Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos. They drafted Troy Franklin in the first round to pair back with Bo Nix. I said fourth round.
You said first.
Well, fourth round. They drafted him in the fourth round.
Okay.
Regardless, they have Troy Franklin. They have Marvin Mims. Their wide receiver room isn't really stacked itself. But it seems like the Broncos are just in a rebuild mode. They drafted Bo Nix. They still have a ton more to fix along that team. So maybe they just want to get rid of Courtland Sutton. It doesn't seem like they really want to, but it might be one of those situations where they have to. Courtland Sutton did not show up for voluntary workouts, for voluntary meetings, and he wants a new contract.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't want to be there, and for the love of God, just someone save that man. Can someone save Courtland Sutton from the Broncos?
Well, here's another aspect to look into. They picked up Patrick Surtain in his 5th-year option. So, they're going to want to try to keep him long-term. He's going to get a big deal because he's one of the best defensive backs in the NFL.
Right.
Are they going to be able to pay Patrick Surtain and give Courtland Sutton what he wants?
I don't know.
When they got to fix every other position, you know what I mean? Like, save some of that. It may have to come down to a business decision. They're going to want to keep a stable on the defense in Surtain because everybody else left.
Right.
But then they may have to make a business decision on wide receiver because they have Bo Nix's buddy and Troy Franklin at the wide receiver room.
Right.
They could still add another name. They could still rebuild that position, get whatever capital, and fix all the other positions with that capital and use some of that money to establish those positions long term.
Yeah, I could definitely see them going that direction. Especially since, Courtland Sutton's been there a while. He's been a pretty decent receiver for them. He's obviously more so a wide receiver, too, than he was a 1. They got rid of Jerry Jeudy, so you might as well just completely revamp the wide receiver room. Courtland Sutton would be a lot cheaper than an Ayuk or a Debo Samuel. And I think it makes a little more sense because everyone knows about the chemistry with Russell Wilson. It'd be a lot cheaper to trade for. He is very experienced. He's reliable. He's a big playmaker. 10 touchdowns with Russell Wilson last year. And him, Sutton, or Pickens, Sutton, and Wilson would be a very good wide receiver trio.
Oh, big time.
I think that's an improved wide receiver room right there. So we still favor Courtland Sutton a little more because we just think it's a lot cheaper. It just makes more sense for the Steelers. It wouldn't cost a lot, and the chemistry's there, and I think it would improve the wide receiver room. So Courtland Sutton, man, it's still a possibility. Anything's still a possibility, honestly. So anything can happen in any moment. But yeah, we still think Courtland Sutton is the most realistic. But they could obviously sign a guy. They could extend Courtland Sutton. Everyone's always questioning about what about Courtland Sutton's contract. They could easily extend him, or they could restructure it very similar to what they did with Dante Jackson when they traded for him.
Right.
So they can make ways to lessen the cap hit or to extend him if they so desire to. He's only 28 years old. He has years of experience, production. So they could have him here for about another 2-3 years if they wanted to.
Yeah, of course.
Add him to a 2-year extension, keep him this year, maybe next year, see what happens in the 3rd year. It just makes sense.
Yeah, and at his current stage of his career, he's a prototypical top-notch number 2. He can play number 1. He was that way for Denver throughout his whole Denver career, but where he is at now at this current stage, perfect number 2.
Absolutely.
He's got that chemistry. George Pickens is a true number 1, and you got Roman Wilson in the slot. I mean, that's a feisty wide receiver room.
I agree.
For Russ and Fields to throw to.
I agree. You got the size guys on the perimeter with Pickens and Sutton, and then you got a guy like Roman Wilson who's very dependable, very fierce, plays bigger than what his size shows at the receiver room. I kind of like that. I like that for Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Because the draft is over does not mean business is over, so Omar Khan is still going to try to add upon this team he has to, not just at wide receiver, at cornerback as well, but mostly wide receiver just because we need extra bodies. We need a little more dependability in that room because it is still very weak with Pickens and Wilson, but it's still very weak. So we'll see what they do, man. He's alluded to them still making a move because of the extra cap space they got.
Yep.
So maybe it's only a matter of time. We'll see what happens. But let us know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Is there any other wide receiver you would hope that they add via free agency or via trade? Any wide receiver you hope they add in the wide receiver room? Let us know in the comments below. Let us know your guys' thoughts. Appreciate you guys. See you in the next one. Here we go, Steelers.
As always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later.
Peace!